Welcome to the Analytics of Dynasty. This is a 30-minute Thursday Dynasty trade session. Subscriber Matt is here. We're going first subscriber in. So Matt, welcome to the podcast. We're going to jump right into it
Greetings.
here. We're going to jump right into it here. We're going to go Russell Wilson. We got some Russell Wilson trades. So Russell Wilson and George Kittle for Lawrence and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And that is just straight PPR, so no tight end premium.
Dangerous side. I like the Russ.
Doesn't this
Russ
feel
and
like
Kittle for me?
Yeah, it feels like almost a free shot at Kittle, right? Like if you just look at that, like you have to have, I think you got to have Lawrence really far apart from ahead of Wilson. I don't think there's justification to do that right now.
I agree.
We might find a trend in this thread. Russell Wilson for Wentz and Allen Robinson.
I think I'll stick with Russell Wilson there too.
I think you're right.
I mean, yeah.
Here's one that's interesting from a roster construction perspective. Russell Wilson for DJ Moore.
Is it super flex?
Yes, these are all super flex, by the way. These are all super flex. All the trades that we're doing are super flex.
Man, I don't know. So I'm the type that hates to be behind at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably just stick with the Russell Wilson side and just hang on for the next few weeks or so.
Doesn't it feel like to do this deal that Russell Wilson's got to be like the wide receiver one? Like you almost have to have DJ Moore as your wide receiver one.
Oh yeah,
to do
exactly.
This. Right, yeah. And I like him, but there's like 5 other guys that I like close enough to him that make that makes some sense. All right, so here's another one I find the construct to be really interesting. Russell Wilson, Jonathan Taylor, and Logan Thomas for Dak Prescott and James Conner, and this is 1.5 PPR. So Wilson, Taylor, and Thomas for Prescott and Conner.
Okay, let me see. Let me put myself in the shoes here. So I think if it's if I'm a plus team, as we were talking about in the rebuild stuff, I might go with the Dak side for it. I might go Dak here, but
yeah.
Man.
So here's the interesting part. Like you have to, I do think there's a gap between Wilson and Prescott.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's someone that fits the mold of being running back one. Like if I don't rank guys just because it is a exercise that I just don't have there's just not enough psychiatry in the world to get me through that exercise. But I can't do, so I don't do straight rankings and I don't see anything linearly either. But if Taylor's got to have the best argument for running back one of anyone not named McCaffrey. And
right.
So and again, this is a pro Dak spot, but even then, you have to have Dak as basically your quarterback one, and Wilson is like your quarterback 15. I think for given what Taylor is, I think worth ultimately, to make that gap. Again, I'm usually one to move up the board at this. I just don't see, and it's probably the fact that I view Russell Wilson in such high regard that I think there's probably not that big of a gap from Prescott. But I think it's interesting. This is, again, that just shows you kind of the cost that it costs to overpay to move up the board.
Right. I dig that, man. But it's hard for me to move Jonathan Taylor anywhere right now. It's weird. So
yeah.
Maybe it's just kind of one of those things that it's like league specific or something.
Is it going to be one of those situations where we're going to sort of his production's actually a lagging indicator on his value, or so it'll be a forward indicator on his value, I guess, where we won't know, the market won't recorrect on his value until February. And we're like, oh, wait a second. And then we've got all this time to sort of digest the fact that he just posted a top 3 running back finish at 22 or something. It's kind of what it's going to feel like. And then he's going to move up the board, and he's probably not in trading for a running back in season can be a little bit difficult too. Especially in this context of other quarterbacks and stuff.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't know where the Colts are going and whatnot, but it's just tough right now. I think with them. So
yeah, I'm with you, and I think you sort of get some of the you're getting some of like the dirt from that situation sort of rubbing on him, where if you just sort of looked at the name and the profile, you'd be like, oh wow, that's got running back 1 written all over it.
Right.
Here's another interesting one from just and we were sort of batting this around in the group me chat earlier today. Russell Wilson and Christian Kirk for Aaron Rodgers and Adam Thielen.
So I mean, I think again in the lens of like a contending team, I'd probably hit the Rodgers side on this one, just to bank those points, especially if Russell Wilson and you don't really have anybody else that, you have a quarter, let's say you have Josh Allen and Russell Wilson. I have that in one league, lost Russell Wilson. I would definitely do this trade to get Rodgers.
Yeah. Doesn't it feel like you're definitely in a situation where it's whatever the long-term, like I think long-term Russell Wilson's more valuable, but that long-term is probably like 3 years away, right? Like, I mean, what's the, whenever we see Rodgers sort of decline, I think he's probably got kind of a longer window than he is really in a decline phase. And so these weeks will add up, right? Like you need that. Like, I don't think Russell Wilson's going to be terribly more productive than Rodgers over the next, couple of years.
Right.
And you're basically going to add a win right now, having Rodgers over Wilson over in the near term. And then all of a sudden, like you're sort of trying to catch up with that, taking the Wilson side, and you're adding Thielen over Kirk, which isn't insignificant, So
exactly.
I think it's interesting. I think like if you're going with a long-term build, again, I see it coming from the other side, but I want a piece other than Kirk.
That's what I was going to say there too, right? Like if you're one of the minus teams, maybe put a pick in place of Kirk or something like that. So
right. Give me an upside. Like, give me a reason to have an upside shot there, right? And Christian Kirk's just not the thing that's going to like tilt anything. And again, maybe you can't get someone that tilts it, but go second to first, or like throw an extra running back at the Rodgers side and say, all right, give me, instead of Kirk, give me a I'll give you a second if you give me a first, like add on to that to get a difference making piece coming back, other than, I like Christian Kirk fine, but he's not going to decide, like he's not going to be the reason that you win at any point.
Yeah, you can easily replace that.
Right. Here's one that I think is interesting from a couple of perspectives, and we could do this pre-injury or post-injury. Well, let's just talk about it as we sit here right now. Russell Wilson in a first this year in 2022 for Josh Allen.
Man, could that be Dak instead? You know what I mean? Let's see. It's like
right. That's an interesting part of this. Yes, that's an interesting part of that,
dude. Man, I think if rebuilding, probably the pick side, of course, and then if I'm going for it, I think I'll take Allen here.
Let me ask you this: if this trade was like, let's just fast forward to June, and we're in a draft, and you've got 204. And you want to go up to Dak Prescott, and you want to go up to Josh Allen territory at 104, right? So you got to basically jump around. Is that going to cost you a first, right? Isn't this trade in August or in the offseason? This is, it probably would have cost you a first. Again, I made that trade in multiple spots. It didn't cost me that because I didn't structure it that way, but that's essentially the price that you would have paid. And so it's interesting to see where you have now Allen being, I'm not sure he's better than what he was last year. He's not better than what he was last year, but I think he gives you don't have to worry about that catastrophic, like he fell through the floor type thing. And now there's a pretty big gap between what him and Wilson are going to do over the next, 2 months. It's really interesting. Like when you look at it, what the prior price was versus what the price is now, especially if that's a late first in a class that's not projected to be that good. Like you're getting all that age and you're getting probably some additional upside. It actually doesn't seem like that much.
Well, and you're right there too. And actually, one thing I like to point out too is there's a narrative about this next class not being that great. But shoot, doesn't that mean we should scoop up a bunch of the picks then? If people are undervaluing them, and then perhaps selling them in the offseason kind of thing.
This is totally you hit on it, right? This is what happens in October, and then we have nothing better to do with our lives from January, 30th to April 30th. And then we convince ourselves that this is the greatest class ever. And, so,
Right.
so like this is just the cycle of how things happen. And so yeah, no, I'm with you. And actually, that first probably appreciates in value pretty
Right.
significantly. And
And that, yeah, that's where I'm at with it too. And it's like, so as we're sitting here, I'm gonna go over here and start making some offers and stuff. No, it's like,
well, I've got a whole bunch of like the Wilson angle interests me because I got a whole bunch of Wilson, and it's in
yes,
teams like there was a team. I have a team that I didn't intend at all to compete with, but Russell Wilson was like playing well enough. I got like some ancillary guys that kept me like even, So I was like, in the equation, I was basically even minus, but I was in a spot where I was like, hey, I could take, I could take picks and a quarterback and go get Prescott, right? I had like, I think 5 first-round picks, and I can go make trades that get me like an elite piece and really move the needle on this team. And then Wilson got hurt, and I sort of put the plug in that. But this is almost making me wonder if I should go back and sort of rejigger some of those trades and not make them Wilson centric instead of some other quarterback centric and sort of add to it. It's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and revisit those given how these look.
oh man, yeah, it's like you can go either way, right? Because like as you said, Russ is like my most rostered quarterback, and I can either move from him in the leagues that I'm a plus on, but also if I'm plus minus or minus minus, try to get some more shares.
Right. You can basically do it in a way that's you're just arbitraging him, right? Like that should be like he's the perfect vehicle to arbitrage right now, because especially if you have a lot of them, because then you have places to do it with. And of course, we're talking like you sell him in one spot for more than you buy him in another, and ultimately your price and your dynasty valuation of your teams goes up over the broad spectrum of it. All right. So another guy, this is interesting because you and I were talking before we logged on. I have like zero faith that this is going to happen in terms of like this trade that's being rumored. But Watson's popping up in the news, and then I'm like trying to do the math, and I'm like, all right, like let's assume he gets traded while we're recording, and this is Wednesday night of week. We're heading into week 7, like, and it takes him a month to get up to speed. Then all of a sudden, like, all right, we've got a couple of weeks, and then we've got a stretch run. And so then I'm putting teams that I have Russell Wilson on, and there's a couple spots where I have Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, or I have basically middling teams that could really use a shot in the arm. And is it actually what Deshaun Watson coming back and giving me 6 to 8 weeks that could do that for me? It's a really interesting. I'm leaning no. I'm leaning the answer to that is no, but I think that it is still an outside shot that it happens. So it's interesting. So that's the context in which we're recording again. So if by the time you listen to this, there's been a Deshaun Watson trade, this is what we know at the moment. But I think I am suspect about it happening, but I think it's still possible. Right. So a couple of ones here. I think there's a bunch of different ways to go on these, and they're fascinating constructs. Watson, a second, a third, and a fourth next year for Aaron Rodgers.
Man, I did a very similar one of this in a league I lost Wilson in, and it was and I got Rodgers on this one, and man, yeah, I think still Rodgers on this. Just it was like Watson and a third for Rodgers and Evan Ingram or something like that. And,
okay.
So I'll take that.
Yeah, it's interesting because like you're definitely getting, it's much more security with the Rodgers angle, right? And I think the upside play is probably the Watson side, but I think the known with Rodgers is much more cuddly and cozy than sitting here with, because you could legitimately sit here and lose 2 years of Watson's prime and then all of a sudden be, which I didn't think was going to happen. But now, like, I think is not an impossible outcome given the fact that Houston's not playing him. And like, or you could sort of flip that into still like a waning productive window for Rodgers. I don't know. It's definitely a how much are you contending and what, how much stomach do you have for the risk. Here's one that I think is interesting, especially where we've come from. Watson for 2020 first and try that again. Deshaun Watson for a 2022 first and a 2023 first. So first in the next 2 years for Deshaun Watson.
I don't know if I would even do one like this actually, because that's, I mean, if you're holding Watson, you might as well hold him until he's starting again. I mean, and then what if you're selling your first to buy Watson? What's going on there? Are you just hoping that he gets his job, gets plays this year or something, or
Right.
what?
Yeah. I think I would take, so I have done enough of these trades where I gave like basically just a straight first in 2021. So I gave like
Mm-hmm.
108, or I actually gave like a couple of like mid first round, like 108 through like 110 type range, and like a couple of later picks. Like I had basically the same construct with someone that I played the same format across multiple leagues. Like it's a couple safe leagues knockoffs, and the guy had Watson, and I had picks that were basically virtually identical across sort of the off by like a pick or two in different rounds and stuff. We basically made the same deal twice.
Right.
And this is like, and it was essentially wrapped around like a mid to late first. And all of a sudden, like now I'm cashing that out with two future firsts. Like it's an
Mm-hmm.
interesting, like from that perspective, it's basically you've done nothing and you've gotten another elite asset. The question is like, are you still selling Watson low? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
whereas
Right.
I think it's an interesting, like you've had all this patience and you've sort of done that. You just take the free cash out of the another elite piece and move on. I don't know. It's an interesting dilemma. Um, it's an interesting
Yeah,
dilemma in that.
exactly. Because I mean, I'm with you, right? We went. I think earlier this off season, we would go, get Watson for
Mhm.
the 106 or
Mhm.
whatever it might be.
Mhm.
So yeah, this would be a straight up cash out, but at the same time, man, I think I'm gonna. It depends on what the team is like, you know. In fact, actually,
That's
can I say,
totally fair. That's totally fair. And the other
yeah,
thing too is like I want to hit a like Watson's the type of player you can hit like a grand slam with. You know what I mean?
right,
Like you
yeah,
can
yeah.
like at that cost, he can be an elite piece. Again, with the random future first in the 2023 guys could also be that too. So,
Mm.
and it makes you wonder like if Watson comes back, how much more, like if he gets traded and the NFL is like, yep, he's eligible, like while we're recording, how much more does he cost
Oh
than
yeah,
this? Because I'm not
yeah.
sure it's all that much. Like even when that moment happens, like do you have to give another core asset to this trade? I'm not sure you do. And because people haven't seen him, I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think his cost is going to rebound at such an outrageous rate.
Mhm.
I mean, I gave 3 firsts for Dak, right? I mean,
Right.
that's not all that like that's another first. Again, I think so, and I think there's a gap there. Like, I don't think it's going up that much more than this particular cost, even when he walks back in.
There might be one in each league that might.
Mm-hmm.
So can I say something about Watson real quick though? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's too funny because I would, the leagues that I was acquiring him in, especially like the best ball leagues where there's no in-season transaction. I was planning to get, the 101 next year with those.
Mm-hmm.
If he comes back this year, that's gonna mess that all
Destroy
up.
you. destroy, destroy,
Yep.
destroy you. I've got a team that I think I've maybe passed it around the group chat, but I left it on the cutting room floor of the rebuilding guy just because I already did like 2 Jordan centric teams. I didn't need to kill everyone with a third one. But I have a team that had basically like it had Akers, it had Evan Ingram, and it had Watson. And it's not full dynasty, so it's 7-man keeper. So basically 3 out of the 7 guys that I was going to keep, and it's 16 team too. So it's pretty deep. Like you don't really have a ton of opportunities to get guys that really matter. And so I was like, I'm this sucks. Like 3 out of my 7 guys. So I'm like, I'm skip it. I'm keeping them all. I'm gonna be horrible. And I was like, I'm gonna flip over my team. I'm gonna try and get future picks. And I ended up getting I got 2 future picks, which are probably gonna both be top 4. Actually I have 7 first over the next 2 years. And I'm actually like mildly competitive. And so if Watson were to come back, like he could actually sort of vault me into the playoffs. And
Oh
it's
man.
gonna be so. And I actually made a trade today where I just got like Noah Fant. I basically added Noah Fant and Mike Davis at the cost of like Sermon and actually a pick upgrade at the cost of Sermon and Ingram. I'm not sure I'd keep Sermon in the league. Like I think there's a chance I'd keep Fant. and the pick upgrade was pretty nice. So all that together, but I'm like, hey, wait a second, like I still have outs here on the season where I can actually be competitive, or I can just flip it back over and sell everything off and take the really high pick. Like I've got lots of options here, but it's interesting how like those rebuilds can totally change, and Watson's gonna be such a determining factor in this. How about this one? Because this one's this one's so fascinating. Watson in a 2023 first. So you're getting Watson and a first in what is praised as an elite class for Tom Brady and Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Was this pre-CEH
This
injury?
Is this week. This happened this weekend. That's kind of what I said.
Yeah. Man. You know what? I think Watson in the pick for me for this one.
Watson in the pick. See, that's exactly where I went with this, because like I look at this and I was like, there's so many ways to win on the massive win. The sides that is the massive sort of dynasty changing win is Watson in the pick. Like you almost can't. It's what do you have to have happen on the other side of that to lose this deal, and it's going to have to be like Edwards-Helaire doing something we just don't expect, and Brady, being quarterback one this year and next, right? Like, and you whiff on the pick, right?
Yeah, you need to hope to be in the money, or even win the championship this year for that to kind of like pay out for you.
Totally, and Watson will like go to prison. Like you basically need like you need the extremes on both ends for it to be a win on the other side. And I get why the contending team would want Brady and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I just if it's a better asset than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that's interesting. You know what I mean? Like if it's I don't know, like Swift or someone like that, it's just that's a tier above that you're probably going to get. But I think it's
like even Zeke, maybe something like
Zeke,
that.
Because Zeke could make a difference, and that actually really leans into your Brady timeline too. You know
exactly.
I mean? Yeah. I'm sort of with you on that. All right, one last one for we'll recycle DJ Moore here for a second. Ryan Fitzpatrick and DJ Moore for Deshaun Watson.
Oh man. Well,
so this is basically the transitive for Russell Wilson deal, right? Yeah, right.
It's just more for Watson. Dang. So I'll fall back to the whole thing again, where I don't like being behind on quarterback, even if it's for next year. So I'll take the Watson side on this one.
Yeah, I keep coming back to this, and it's like, which guy? And we'll talk about another one in a second, but which guy is going to be the guy that really tilts your roster on a championship team? And it's going to be Watson. Like Moore's nice, but man, that's like, if it's a different, if that quarterback is Cousins, or if that quarterback is like Derek Carr instead of Fitz, like I think that matters. But yeah, it's interesting because I think like Watson can totally change the axis in which your team rotates. I just don't think DJ Moore can, and I think that at these elite like sort of costs, and I don't think it's even that high of a cost. Like again, like DJ Moore's like what wide receiver, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 15 if we were to rank him. Like it's a nice cost, but it's not anything that like if that person misses, like that's well within the range of outcomes at probably a higher rate than we would ordinarily think of it. So I think it's interesting.
The guy getting Fitz must be like a Heineke owner or something like that.
Right. He's gonna stash his he's got to back up his Heineke shares.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got a couple more minutes here. So we've basically got 6 minutes to go. Let's hit two more players. We've got Michael Thomas for Devin Funchess in a 2022 first. So it's basically Thomas for a first.
MT for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Can't he make a huge difference here down the stretch? Like there's no one there to throw to other than him. Like it's just it's interesting.
I'll wait until he shows that he can't freaking do it anymore. Right. Then
Right. Especially if you're contending. I don't know. I think if that pick's late, like man, he has to be like totally falling off a cliff for him not to outpace that. All right. Here's a different angle on pivoting him, right? So that was basically a pivot across to a pick. Michael Thomas and a 2022 first for Tyreek Hill and a 2022 third. So basically moving
Hmm.
Thomas in a first up the hill and then getting a third back.
Maybe this is because I have 0% of this guy, but I will go with Tyreek Hill on this one.
Yeah, yeah,
Just so I can have one, you know.
right. Again, this
I don't
one
know
is
if I
like,
can do it though.
yeah,
Like,
I would, because you're getting like a top 5 wide receiver, like, and
right,
you
but
don't
I'm
know
saying I
if
don't know if I can, if it would even be accepted if I were to try this out though.
true. It'd be interesting to like if that team is not competitive. What if the
Right.
Tyreek Hill, if that is interesting to the Tyreek Hill owner? I've got a fair amount of Thomas, so I'm
Yeah.
interested in exploring something like that. Thomas and J.K. Dobbins, and this is going to have to be a lesson for us in future iterations, because you have a couple of these. Like you have some of Dobbins, and you actually have some of Cam Akers as well, where they're basically the same deal, but it's Michael Thomas and it's J.K. Dobbins, and it is for I'm sorry, I totally botched. I put Sanders. I think it's Emmanuel Sanders. It's Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, I was about to
It's
say, is it
Emmanuel
Miles
Sanders.
or man? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it's Thomas and J.K. Dobbins for Alvin Kamara and Emmanuel Sanders.
Man, oh shoot, I think I'll go with the AK-47 side on this one, because I think that he can, especially if I'm contending, I'll go with that side.
Yeah. It seems like you're getting a big time difference making piece. Here's another one. Here's the most fascinating, and we'll end with a couple Akers trades. Akers in a 2022 first for Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas.
Dang. What's the highest the scale of the slam dunk smash?
This is the like drop the infant and like run him run like risk running it over with a car to get to your computer and accept.
Oh yeah. Kamara Thomas side right there.
Isn't this? And I have a couple more. So we'll finish with a couple. So all right, we'll pivot to Akers for a second. A couple more Akers.
All right.
Akers in a 2022 second for Mixon.
Depends on how you feel about Mix. And
yeah, that's totally.
This is one that I actually can't picture myself doing either way. But if I had to choose, probably, man, I'll go for Mixon if I'm going for it. But if I need like some, future upside or whatnot, Akers side.
Yeah. Do you think there's more of a market in this offseason to trade Akers or to trade Joe Mixon?
You talking about next offseason?
Yeah, like if we're sitting in like 3 months from now.
Depends on how Mixon finishes the year, but if we hear good stuff about the Achilles, I think I'm pretty sure Akers might start getting more interest.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with that one, or?
It's always tough to predict how the market's going to react to some of these things, but it's this, I think the big takeaway from this, and the next two that I'll actually do with you, and we've got basically a minute and 30 left, but we've got the next two that I sort of look at, I think is such a huge takeaway for me. Akers and a 2022 second for Nick Chubb. Right. Isn't that the piece that you sort of like, if you can do that for Mixon, like, can you, holy smokes, you can do that for Chubb? That's incredible.
Right.
Here's the other one that I think is fascinating and the big takeaway. Akers and Etienne for Dalvin Cook and Devontae Booker.
Jeez. Yep. Dalvin Cook, 360 slam dunk.
Right. And this is like the takeaway for me on this is like, you have to, like, the pain of waiting on some of these deals, like even when you have a guy that gets hurt, like if you can buy low and you can just stash him or just take it and deal with it, like you can flip it for a core asset when there's people that are desperate and looking for, they're desperate for hope in the future. Like this is exactly the pivot that you can make, and it's totally gettable, even though it doesn't seem like it at the time. It's a fascinating like slam dunk trade because you're basically trading two depreciating or two really depressed assets for a total difference maker. All right, one you want to do one Patrick Mahomes trade?
Oh yeah, let's go.
All right, here we go. All right, we've got 10 we got 15 seconds. Stafford, DeAndre Swift, Tyler Boyd for Patrick Mahomes and Deebo Samuel.
Mahomes on that one.
I'm with you. And it's a steep price to pay too. All right, Matt, thanks for coming on. I appreciate
Cheers.
it. We're at 30 minutes. Until next time, continue embracing the variance. We'll talk again very soon.